Welcome to Overnight Experts, the podcast where we talk about something that we became an expert on overnight. I'm JJ, and joining me are
Aiden
and David.
Today I wanted to talk to you guys about an extinct species. Y'all familiar with the Thylacine?
I am a little bit. I saw an exhibit in a zoo last time I was in Australia.
Yeah, if nothing else, you've definitely heard of the Tasmanian Tiger, which is its most common nickname.
Yeah, I think my only exposure to this creature was, I don't know if this ever aired in the US. Did you ever watch the show Kratts Creatures?
Oh, I did!
Yes.
It features in one of the episodes, and that is probably all I know about the Tasmanian Tiger.
Actually, the Tasmanian Tiger is... Wait, no, shoot. No, it is Tasmanian Tiger. I got it mixed up. There's also the Tasmanian Devil. That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're different things. You got Tasmanian devils and Tasmanian tigers, right?
Yeah, they're different. Yeah, I actually saw a bit about this last year. I was going to DC to check out some of the museums. Natural History Museum has there's a little exhibit with some Australian taxidermized creatures, and they got one with this irregular dingo showing in front, but there's a little veil behind it with another taxidermy behind it, and there's a button you can press that turns on a light to illuminate, and there they have a captured Thylacines been taxidermized and preserved in this exhibit.
So is that an actual Thylacine taxidermy then?
I believe so. I don't know how much of these might be recreations. There are, seeing as it's an extinct species, but it's one that died out in more recent human history. There are captives and examples they have in various zoos with taxidermy and other things because they're all dead. But for this one, they had it back there kind of with a placard kind of explaining how they came to pass in the area and are no longer around. So the model and setup was kind of interpreting how that is, to kind of give it a ghostly appearance. I don't know. I kind of like the presentation of that.
Well, now I'm wondering how long taxidermy can last. Will it last forever?
There's some interesting things about that. There's a YouTube channel I like from the Field Museum in Chicago, the Brain Scoop. I think I've shown you guys it once or twice.
Oh, yeah.
They did that thing about Dimetrodon and stuff. But yeah, there's something to talk about with plasticization, which is a gross procedure where they can actually break down with, I think, some kind of bacteria, natural organic materials and turn it into effectively a plastic sort of a solution. Ew. So yeah, it's gross. It's awful. But there's a lot of things you can preserve and become it becomes something that just kind of lasts forever. It's gross, but it's really cool.
Okay, so as part of my degree, I definitely saw human specimens that were plastinated. Yeah, I just didn't realize you could do it with something that has hair, or is that different to taxidermy?
It might be. But stuff quite possibly is not going to last forever. I don't know if they've done it that far. Usually, the subjects I've seen have been on things like human bone or tissue, and things that are a little more firm. I don't know if they've ever done it to an entire taxidermized animal, but it does seem to work pretty well on most organics. So if they want it to last, that's what you do. I just don't know every material that makes it through that process.
Did the Thylacine have hair?
It did. It was kind of... Actually, I got some information on its unique properties. The Thylacine was a mammal, but particularly more marsupial. So it has very few things that are closely related to it. On the level of an order, it is closely related to the Tasmanian devil or a numbat or things like that. But there aren't a lot of things that tie back to it that we have detected besides just Thylacines.
Now I have to look at what a numbat is.
They're a tiny little marsupial. They look kind of like squirrels.
I'm looking at the map of distribution in Australia, and they are in the south part. And when I lived in Australia, I lived East Coast. So that's why I never saw any.
Yeah, they seem to have very few places where they still exist. It seems a lot of these creatures in mainland Australia have kind of disappeared over time, which relates to also how the Thylacine would disappear later on. But yeah, so they were kind of a weird one. There's a lot of traits of them that kind of had convergent evolution, because I called them the Tasmanian Tiger earlier, which is the common name for them, because they develop stripes similar to a tiger. It's also very interesting that if you look at one, it looks kind of like a canine. They were often called something like a Tasmanian wolf or other things like that. But again, they're marsupial. They're not at all related to canines. But if you look at their skulls, it is weird how close they look. Like, if you show somebody said it was like a large fox or something, it would be almost identical.
Huh. So it's just like convergent evolution. That's the perfect skull shape to be doing what it's doing. I
would think that would be basically it, because it seems like it's a weird one, because it doesn't quite like outrun things. It doesn't seem like it was ever good at running because of the way its legs are, but it could hop. So similar to like a kangaroo, it would take its forelegs in and bounce, but mostly seeming to escape. Unfortunately, by the time explorers found it, most of it wasn't able to catch most big prey. They believe it might have gone after Tasmanian emus, which might make a little more sense than we go after a flightless bird with a mouth like that.
So despite its similarity in appearance to the dingo, they couldn't be more distantly related.
Oh yeah, they're not related at all. The dingo is, if I'm remembering correctly, was domesticated dogs that were kind of fled out into the wild and became feral. Now we have feral dogs.
And they love to eat babies.
Oh my gosh. And thylacines too. They did.
Oh, did they?
Did they eat the thylacines?
Or they took they were competition for prey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So dingo ate my thylacines. There's the title card. They were weird little creatures.
So, but it was a predator, right? Because you were saying that, like its body type didn't necessarily lend itself well to catching like fast prey necessarily.
Yeah, like it doesn't look like it was like an ambush predator, but it could have been with the camouflage. But it also doesn't look like it could have run anything down because of its body with the weird arch spine and the legs and everything. Yeah, they were a weird one.
So would they have been an apex predator pre-dingo?
They actually are believed to have been apex predators. Out of everything that was around, it seems that they were in fact the apex predator of the mainland Australia and Tasmania.
Until the most apex of all apex predators showed up. Man!
Yeah, it's like as soon as they got there's actually a lot of things that are presumed to happen, because most of them were gone by the time explorers found them. So we don't entirely know everything that took them out. Interestingly, little fun fact that comes into this later, like all marsupials, I think all of them have them, but they have pouches. On most things, it's just the females that have pouches for raising youth and stuff like that. It turns out the male ones also had pouches.
Interesting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yep. It made things very confusing for determining if one was male or female, and because the pouch basically just decided to hide the more notable sexual organs, so there was no way to really tell by just looking at one, is that male or female? It's a little more difficult.
Okay, so are they the only, or were they the only marsupials to have both genders have pouches?
I did find one other where the males have pouches, which is the water opossum. I'm not really sure what makes the water opossum different than other opossums, and quite frankly, I always mix up possums and opossums because they're different.
Wait, they are different?
Oh, there isn't there like, I always think there's the ones in Australia, right?
Yeah. So in Australia, they're possums.
The possums, yeah, okay.
And in the US, they shorten it. So the official name is opossum, but they shorten it down to possum. And the way that you can remember this is that this is the only instance where Americans say things the shorter way and Australians say things the longer way. Usually Australians come up with their own shorter versions of saying things.
Yeah, that's a weird one. It really is.
But yeah, American opossums, very ugly and horrifying. Australian possums, very cute.
I think American opossums are kind of an ugly cute, but I still don't want to
Okay, but looking this up, they named the Australian possums after the possums of the U.S. So,
Weird.
first is best. That's all I'm saying. I'm just kidding. Possums are so ugly.
They're strange little creatures, but they're also America's only mammal. Well, not mammal. Frick. They are the
only one.
The only marsupial in the West, but out in Australia they have way more. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The tree possums in Australia are
They're pretty cute.
They're way cuter. They really are. But yeah. So interestingly, with the Thylacine, like it's one creature that seems to have existed since like the Ice Age, or it's a Pleistocene age or something like that. I can't get those names right.
That was another thing. Like the name Thylacine always confused me because it sounds like an epoch, right? Like it sounds like the name of a time period, even though it's not. And I guess those scenes are CENE and this is CINE, but still, it confuses me.
Yeah, it is a weird one because as I was like, taking notes and everything, I was like, Pleistocene, Thylacine, that's that. But no, I think there's a different root to that. I'm not entirely sure what the name actually means, but just kind of what it's been given. But the Thylacines genus had been seen since then. We've had fossil records of different types that existed well before anyone was able to research them, including some that were like actually as big as some dogs, but the ones that we had seen it up into more recent history were a lot smaller. Yeah, so there were a few of them, but they kind of phased out over time. Same era for Ice Age would be when we also started seeing like the modern man and various other marsupial creatures that were also in competition with Thylacine around the time it was existing in Australia.
And so Thylacine won out of all of those until it didn't make it past whatever point it went extinct.
Yeah, there was a time when there were a lot of other larger mammals in Australia, but it seems now that most mammals or marsupials are rather small, except maybe like the kangaroo, which is nothing can beat that thing.
Can confirm.
do not mess with them.
Yeah, don't fight a kangaroo. You'll lose.
No, they are scary looking creatures.
So you've been saying like modern era. Like when was the last time a Thylacine was, I guess, seen?
Oh, well, yeah.
The last time it was Thylacine?
Yeah, get out.
Yeah. Actually, that's more important details to the story. But yeah, the last one we had seen died in 1936. So within like the previous century, they had existed, but there were very, very few. It was enough for that people to be researching them and like discovering them, but not enough to actually save them from extinction.
Yeah, because like in the 30s, would they have understood like extinction is forever? Like once the last one is dead, that's the end of the species?
I think absolutely they did. And I mean, not like a couple of decades before this, Darwin did a lot of his research in similar areas to study lots of species and stuff. Man, that's not a good explanation at all.
Well, maybe not. Not did they understand, but like, did they care? Like, were they concerned about future generations never getting to see a live Thylacine?
Yeah, to care, I couldn't really get a good read on the attitudes, but there were absolutely attempts to have them in captivity and try and resurrect them, but there was much difficulty with that. And not long before the last one died, there had been the last one seen in the wild was hunted and killed by a hunter. So,
Great.
If people were trying, it seems like there wasn't a lot of people caring to keep it alive.
So what did they eat?
They ate mostly other marsupials, it seems. There is theories that they went after the Tasmanian emus, but they also went extinct. So we've never been able to record or determine if that was part of their diet or not. Yeah, they were hunters, but it seems like they just went after smaller prey. Yeah, the interesting thing about them in Australia is by the time Europeans showed up and settled there, they were already extinct in mainland Australia.
So would that be because of the dingoes? Would that be what drove them off the mainland?
quite checked who introduced dingoes, if it was Western settlers or if it was other tribes bringing them from other places. I don't entirely know, but there was a later time in when the British went to Tasmania and started setting colonies there. They brought dogs there, and those started competing for prey or fighting thylacines and other things. So introducing them into the environment did not seem to do well for the other predator animals. Let's see.
Yeah, as far as I know, the dingoes were there pre-European.
They're a couple 1,000 years old, aren't they?
Yeah, would have come over with the Aborigines.
Yeah, and actually, what's interesting is I was looking into it, what did cause these things to go extinct? And it seems that there's not entirely great information, but there's research done to kind of discover around when they started disappearing and check, was it environmental changes? Was it people? There were significant climate changes that would have affected the wildlife sometime around when they seemed to be going extinct, but they have been going extinct definitely before those changes. So the timelines, it seems, with events in Oceania is that the arrival of humans, probably the Aborigine people, coming and hunting the creatures in Australia probably is what killed them off faster.
So they just couldn't hack it in the new Australia.
I guess not. But then again, if you're, hunting to survive and you see creatures big enough to make a meal out of, it seems like the ones that all went extinct were mostly larger marsupials. So again, it seems like everything but the kangaroo in the large size is gone. So kangaroos know how to fight back.
Yeah, and in general, that does seem to be a global thing, is that once the Ice Age was done, all the megafauna, for the most part, died off. So we don't have giant sloths anymore. We don't have mammoths anymore. You've got, obviously, the giant animals in Africa, for the most part. In North America, what's the biggest thing? A moose?
Probably. Those things are gigantic.
Yeah.
But just in general, it became less evolutionarily advantageous to be a large mammal.
Yeah, so most of them had, and the environment changing would have caused them to die off, but also it seems hunting was. But again, the best information we have is correlation of events. So unfortunately, it's a bit of an unknown what took them out in mainland.
Which is funny considering how recent it was. You could find somebody old enough to have seen a thylacine in real life. So it's interesting that you don't quite have that. I guess they weren't quite paying attention to it until it was too late. Yes,
that's true for Tasmania, not mainland.
Okay.
So in the mainland, they were already taken out, seemingly hunted, and couldn't survive the climate. Tasmania seemed to be doing a lot better. They were still primary hunters in that area. They had some good competition with their cousins, the Tasmanian devils, but they seemed to be holding it together. Came along some settlers. I believe it was all British settlers in that area. I know we talked about that another time.
The British.
Yeah. Interestingly, the crest that they have for Tasmania after they settled it actually includes two thylacines on it, similarly to the way they show lions or wolves and other crests.
Cool.
Yeah, so they and then you come and you bring in people who and hunters and again other dogs, and it seems that the competition with dogs really affected them in Tasmania. There was some interesting research done. There was massive environmental impact from having introduced canines into the area.
Now, would they have gone after European livestock?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if they would, because quite frankly, it looks like they were, they could have been hunters of larger prey. And if they were to go after rather placid animals, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Similarly to wolves, where if you have mentioned before, if you hunt all the bison and then replace them with cattle, the wolves are going to eat the cattle. It makes sense, though, if you bring another creature that is also a predator into a new area, that it is going to start competing with the local ones. And I guess whichever one is more successful in the environment will beat out the other one.
Dingoes.
Old dingoes. Actually, I don't think these were dingoes in Tasmania. They seem to be ones brought over by the British.
Oh, okay. Again, the Brits.
Yeah. There were also significant, the dogs were also significant to the Aborigine lives too. So it might not entirely be British, but it seems that they started really affecting the environment when the British showed up and brought them.
So it was the British that were the final nail in the coffin for the poor Thylacine.
So it might seem like they were already struggling and just, now having to compete even harder with larger animals that are probably better at hunting than they were, really kind of did them in. For a while, they did manage to keep a few in captivity. I'm not sure if it was like really preservation or just more curiosity, but they did have a few. But then around like the 1930s came what the hunter I mentioned previously, Wilf Batty, who wound up hunting the last known thylacine in the wild. And there's actually pictures of the guy. You can see him like posing with the game, and I don't think he's aware that that was the last one. Yeah, there he is, the dog, all smiling, big old rifle.
This will come back to get me on social media. Instead in the 30s.
You didn't have to worry about cancel culture back then.
Who were his descendants? They gotta pay.
Yeah, I mean, what is it like? There was that like dentist guy who killed a lion, and everyone's up in arms.
Cecil the lion, right? I don't remember.
Yeah, apparently the lion had a name. Interestingly, the last living Thylacine also was given the name of Benjamin.
Benji.
Benji, yes. This one was kept in a zoo, Hobart Zoo, which is, I guess, a name that you could name it something. Preferably not anyone's children. I wouldn't want to name someone Hobart. That just sounds unfortunate. But yeah, so they had one in there, and it seems like at that point there was an attempt to try and resurrect them. They wanted to. They had one, and they were like, "Well, can we find another one? Give it a mate or something?" But they were unsuccessful in finding anything. And as it turns out, Benjamin was aptly named because it was a male, and so there was no chance of it alone bringing back a species, even if they couldn't find another male, wouldn't work, or they found no females. So that was the last one, and it passed away in 1936 September.
So, like, did they try to breed them in captivity?
It didn't see I don't think there were enough to try. It seemed like they only had the one, and that was Benjamin. Well,
there's your first problem.
Yeah, it's like you can't really do anything with that. And there was apparently somebody who claimed to work there by the name of Frank Darby, who wrote about Benjamin later, and that's where they got the name from. He said that they called it Benjamin and that it was a male, but this guy seemed to have no real credentials of ever actually being there, so it's kind of dubious.
Just some dude who'd like to go visit the museum.
He's like, yeah, I knew this. Yeah, I knew old Ben. No, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's very credible, but his narrative of that event seems to have stuck in the naming and also some traits of the last one. But other than that, it's kind of iffy.
Do they know if they could have found a way to breed it? Like, let's say you only had a female. Is there like a genetically similar enough animal that you could crossbreed and then get something approximating a thylacine?
Well, no, not really, because we mentioned previously that the closest thing was maybe a Tasmanian devil at like the order. That is not going to be compatible. They would have needed two.
Punching above his weight class doesn't mean you can't do it.
He could have tried. He absolutely could have tried.
Well, I was going to ask, like, if they have specimens, then they must have thylacine DNA. How far away are we until you're making a thylacine clone?
So you say that. There were people who claimed that they could. Early on, this was like being a species that became extinct quite a while ago. There were quite a few people who claimed or used it as an example of like, with cloning technology, we can bring this animal back. Who was the name of the guy?
Dolly the sheep. Sorry, what?
There is Dolly. Yeah, that's one of them. But there was an Australian museum that was working on a cloning project. They wanted to use genetic material from extinct species to try and restore them, but it didn't seem to actually go anywhere. Okay, so the head guy on that project, Mike Archer, It received, apparently Australia has something called a Bent Spoon Award, which is for, quote, the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle.
All right.
Okay then.
Yeah, that's quite an achievement. So
like the Razzies in film, like, oh man, you just did so spectacularly awful. Here you go.
Yeah, so they tried to spin a narrative of we can clone this thing back into life, but they had nothing to go on. There was somebody who talked about the ethics of cloning an extinct species in a TED Talk. I think in 2013, they tried to talk about it again. Wait, was that Mike Archer again? Oh, shoot, it's the same guy.
Nice.
Oh, man, he came back around in 2013 to try again. Apparently doing a little more research into DNA of Thylacine and also the gastric brooding frog.
Yeah, we definitely need more of those.
We don't need more frogs. I'm sorry. So this guy's been trying to say that they can clone it and bring it back to life, and has discussed the ethics of cloning extinct species and other things, but I don't think we're anywhere near doing that. They have some samples of some young ones, but I don't think anyone's managed to. No one's managed to pull this off. It has not happened.
What are the arguments against bringing back an extinct animal?
I haven't looked too much into what other people think. Generally, what I think is, let's say we take a more extreme example. Let's say somebody wants to resurrect the Stegosaurus. Sounds cool, right? We have 5 movies on why you should do that. But
6 one's coming out.
More to the point, how would that thing survive today when it has zero immunity to any microorganisms that have continued to evolve well beyond what anything their immune system could have handled?
Ooh, good point.
If you bring back an animal from a long bygone era, and it will almost certainly get sick and die.
Okay, but what's the argument against trying that? I mean, obviously that is a likely outcome for certain animals, but why not give it a shot to see if you can?
I would be interested if somebody did. Honestly, I don't want to throw ethics to the wind. I think they're important, but if if some mad scientist person wanted to go ahead and try and accomplish it, cool.
Probably a big factor, right? These millions of billions probably of dollars that you're spending to resurrect a Stegosaurus, you could have given.
Yeah, there's a lot better things you could be spending that research on, I think. But I'd rather be a little more future forward, but also avoiding the possibility of, extinction of other species. Learn from mistakes is what I'd rather do.
Yeah, and I guess if there's nothing that's similar enough to a Tasmanian tiger, it's going to be really hard to clone it. Like Aiden, you were talking about Dolly the sheep. They cloned Dolly the sheep by taking its DNA and putting it in the egg of a different sheep.
Right.
So you've already got a sheep that for your cloning process. And then I've also heard that for cloning a mammoth, they want to put mammoth embryos in an elephant.
I was about to cite the same study there. Yeah, that is so. I mean, they are close enough, and that's what I'm saying. I feel you could find something that's vaguely similar enough, and if their closest relative is the Tasmanian devil, could you find if you had some thylacine DNA, could you put that into a Tasmanian devil, have it just to give birth, and then even though it's going to be bigger than a Tasmanian devil, raise it from there?
It would be certainly interesting if they could. Nobody's tried. People have claimed they want to, but it seems mostly they pick it as a species that has often been known to have been long gone and could not be saved. So it's often kind of picked as the thing of what if we could bring this back? And not so much actual action.
Kind of DNA, right? You can't just take a hair and say, boom, clone done. You need, genetic tissue from reproductive organs, right?
Yeah, and they have some young specimens. I have no idea how well those are preserved. And even in amongst those specimens, they found a few mistakes. Oh, hey, turns out one of these was a Tasmanian devil.
Ooh, awkward.
Yep. Whoops. So there had been attempts to try and keep them alive and resurrected, but it just seems like nothing could have worked. There was quite a lot of searching to find a mate for Benjamin, but even at that point, they didn't know if Benjamin was male or female.
There's a problem.
through its whole life, people there was that one guy who said it was male. It seems that a lot of people assumed it was female, but again, the pouch, it was a little hard to tell the difference.
I'm trying to think what the female equivalent of the name Benjamin is.
I was thinking about that earlier. I'm like, I don't know. But they actually in 2011, they actually did some DNA samples on Benjamin and confirmed, it was male.
Okay, so we don't need to figure out what the female version of Benjamin is.
Yes.
Thank you, science.
Oh, I found a gross way that they found out that they could figure out if it was male or female. Do you want this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. This is just straight off of Wikipedia. When frame 3 is enlarged, the scrotum can be seen, confirming that the thylacine is male. By enhancing the frame, the outline, individual tests are discernible. So they were able to do, that was in 2011. They managed to examine. Oh, they did it from film, not DNA. I was wrong.
Zoom in, enhance. No, too much.
Yeah, so they were barely able to notice that there was something underneath the pouch in video, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's male," but they had nothing else to go on than just like a couple frames of video.
Still, like 1930s video. I don't know if I'd trust that. It's not known for its quality.
It's rather grainy and not that great. Actually, there is footage that you can view today that they managed to preserve.
So why did they go back and test the DNA? Like who is funding the testing of old specimens to find out their gender?
It seems like it was related to the Hobart Zoo and stuff they had been working on. Photographic analysis in 2011 was what confirmed that, but it seems like there wasn't a whole lot.
I'm just saying, like next time the zoo asks me for a donation, I'm going to say, okay, well, is this going to figure out whether or not a 100-year-old extinct tiger is a dude or a girl or what?
Are you building an Australian Jurassic Park with this money?
Could you imagine like an Australian version of Jurassic Park, but everything is just deadly?
How is that different to regular Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Boom, roasted.
Let's see, who did this? Stephen Slytheholm was the citation on if he was able to like determine if it was alive or not. That is interesting. Okay, so they were working on a database, it seems, in Westbury, the UK, and so in trying to determine like everything they could about Thylacine specimens, they went over footage of Benjamin, and in doing so, they managed to find enough evidence to say, yeah, it looks like it was male.
I mean, also imagine that being your job, just to comb over 100-year-old footage to look at an extinct animal.
This is handed to the intern, just look for the scrotum. I'm like, no. Yikes. But you can see how that's weird because it's all like because of the male pouch, which is such a different thing for any creature. So that was a real challenge. But again, if they only had one they could capture, there wasn't much they could do. They had been searching for a while after that, but they just couldn't find anything. And around the same time, Benjamin was captured a little after the last one found in the wild was killed. So already there had been nothing else seen except for the one killed and Benjamin. So there had been found nothing in the wild at all during Benjamin's captivity.
And so, wait, how did he get hunted then? Did they just kind of give up and were like, all right, yeah, this dude wants to pay us to shoot this thing. Yeah, fine.
It would seem that, unfortunately, the thing was only in captivity for 3 years. So they ultimately just probably didn't have enough time.
Oh, they just released it back into the wild?
No. It died in captivity.
Oh, okay.
In 1936. So they had been holding on to it and trying to keep the species going, but with just one, they couldn't do anything.
Yeah, but like it got shot. They still let somebody hunt it?
No, that was a different one. That's the weird one. Is like the framing of the data is a little weird, but the last one known to be wild was shot in 1930. But Benjamin, the last captive one, was captured in 1933. So there had been another one seen in the wild after the last one was shot, but it was considered captive.
Well, they should have offered a better reward for it.
There actually was a reward for a while to try and find one in the wild today. And some of that might just be like publicity stunt things, because I'm talking about campaign that had been run in like 1989 to 2005. So this was a long time after anyone had ever seen one.
Yeah. Well, now I'm starting to, I guess, wonder. So you've heard of cryptids, things like Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot. At what point does an extinct animal that really existed become a cryptid?
That is an interesting one, because typically I think when you think of cryptids, you think of things that have like no concrete evidence of actually existing, like say Bigfoot or Loch Ness, or like the sunk ape. That thing's creepy. Like there's some like you have like some weird tangential evidence, like terrible photos, but nothing concrete.
If they found Bigfoot, like it would no longer be a cryptid; it would just be another piece of data in the evolutionary tree.
Yeah, then suddenly you'd have a confirmed species. But in this case, we're dealing with a creature that did absolutely exist. It existed to the point of us being able to record it in video and everything, and have it in captivity and test it. But none of them exist today. And so if you were to find one or claim to have found one, those claims kind of wind up more in the field of cryptozoology, because for all intents and purposes, it doesn't currently exist.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we know of. If somebody were to find one, that would be incredible, but it seems they're gone.
Well, and if they weren't gone, I think all the fires in Australia recently.
Oh no,
that's definitely the end of them.
Honestly, I don't. With everything that's gone on this year, it's kind of hard to remember. That was like what, January?
Yeah, like late 2019.
Dang,
I forgot about that entirely.
Yeah, there's just been so much, but. Honestly, I'm kind of curious how much research has been done on the effects on wildlife with that, because certainly during it was clear that wildlife was really struggling. But have we like ultimately lost any species over it? I don't know.
Not that I've heard of.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that would be at the forefront of news.
Not right now. No, everything seems like the forefront of news right now. It's crazy, but yeah, it would seem. Even without extinction, like those fires were devastating.
So apart from showing up in the coat of arms of Tasmania, is there like any other more cultural significance of the Thylacine? Like when I was in Australia, I feel like a couple of Australians I spoke to didn't even know what I was talking about when I asked about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. It doesn't seem like there's much that's been given to them. It does seem like there is a little bit of like notoriety from the fact that it is extinct. Like previously I mentioned, people who mention cloning options will bring it up. It seems like oftentimes it just kind of goes mostly unknown. There was the if you want to know, there's a video game called Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
When did that come out?
It was a PlayStation 2 game in 2002.
Okay, as we all know, all media from 2002 is aged extremely well.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, that's
like a sports team called the Tasmanian Tigers, or are those the Tasmanian Devils?
There is a Devils team. I mean, there's lots of Devils teams, but there was a Tasmanian Devils team of sorts. I don't think there was ever anything for the Tigers. There is a musical. Here you go. There's a musical about extinct species, Rockford's Rock Opera, which featured a character that is a Thylacine. I've never heard of this thing before. I'm just finding out about this. What does this even sound like? I wish I could find like a recording of it to listen to.
The recording has also gone extinct.
So it would seem. It looks like there was an audiobook version of it, but it doesn't seem like it's done much to go around. It's on BBC Radio. There you go.
Going back to that nickname, the Tigers. What were the stripes for?
I'm not sure if we have a confirmation, but I'm going to take a guess and say, like, this is not a very large creature. It's like, about a size of a medium-sized dog in brush. I think that would serve the same purpose as a tiger, which would be camouflage.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to compare photographs of it, somebody had managed to take one in the background, and you can kind of see those stripes blending right in. Okay,
I guess I'm just wondering why the stripes don't like extend to the full part of its body.
It is weird, isn't it, that it's only on like the hind? It reminds me of I don't remember the name of that. I guess it's a cervid sort. It's not antelopes. There's a creature out in Africa. This is a similar thing of stripes, but only on like the rear.
An okapi?
I think it's an okapi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah, those are weird. I was wrong. They're not cervine. They're the Giraffidae. I didn't know they were related to giraffes. That's cool.
Oh, they kind of look like little giraffes.
Don't they? Yeah, that's weird. There's not a lot of things in Giraffidae. It just seems to be the Okapia and giraffe.
It looks like a hybrid between a giraffe and a zebra and a donkey.
Yeah. Oh, wait, it's got little horns. I never noticed that. Or not horns. What do they call them? Are they actually antennae on giraffes?
Antenna?
I call them antenna. I know that's wrong.
I don't think that's the technical term.
But they have like the little little furry horns sticking up.
They do look kind of like antenna.
I call them antenna. I'm sticking to
Maybe
it.
that's why giraffes are so tall, so they can get a better signal.
Yeah. They're connecting to the Starlink satellites.
Wiring giraffes together.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, perfect. This is how we'll bring wireless internet to Africa.
Perfect.
Yeah, just bounce them off the giraffes. But yeah, it's an interesting little story about them, the Thylacine, and just species that was already struggling, got hunted out, and by the time anyone wanted to make an effort to save it, it just seems like it was too little too late.
A cautionary tale.
I would say so. And today I think a lot of people are much more aware of extinct species and wanting to preserve them, or hopefully I think it also shows not to interfere too much, because again, things you might have thought of, like if you're settling and bring dogs to a new island, that's going to affect local species and things like that. And even today, weird aside, but I've heard stories of, in places like Florida, there are some plans to be like, if we could introduce sterile female mosquitoes and get rid of the mosquito population, there are people who claim that there is like going to be zero consequences for doing it, because everything that eats them has way more things and there's nothing else they seem to provide to the environment. And it all sounds good because we hate mosquitoes, right?
Agreed.
Yeah,
mosquitoes are awful.
All I'm hearing is you're adding in more mosquitoes.
Yeah, they're adding mosquitoes that can't create mosquitoes. So,
but then mosquitoes then just go find one that could. Is the idea that mosquitoes are too stupid to find a mosquito that can?
I don't know how well that plan lands out, but even something like that is a plan to extinct a species. And sure, I see sure, people can look at it and be like, yeah, we've done the research. There's nothing that will be negatively affected by if mosquitoes run around. But I worry about the hubris of man, maybe a little too much.
You can't prove that. Like scientifically, you can't prove that something isn't somehow dependent on mosquitoes.
You don't know what you got till it's gone. I know what we got. Mosquitoes are awful, but but the
devil you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather just stay inside or try to mitigate them in certain areas rather than extinct a species. That is, I think, much too outlandish.
Yeah, well, even reducing their number would help reduce the spread of malaria, and that's the big thing that mosquitoes do is malaria.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. If we don't know all the consequences, and I mean, if you've seen Jurassic Park, that's why they have a chaos mathematician at the park to figure out what are the possible consequences of doing what they're doing. Same thing with mosquitoes. We don't know the lasting impact of that.
Yeah, it's something that I think if something like that were to actually come out, I personally think that's crazy and people wouldn't be able to pull it off. But it's good to be very cautious because we've seen species go, and before you realize what you have, it was too late to save them. So.
Well, and so I guess here's the other perspective on that, and maybe this sounds crass, but what major benefit to the environment did the Thylacine provide? What is lost now that it is gone?
Yeah, it seems like, being an apex predator, probably a lot of what other apex predators would do, which is control populations of prey creatures and other such things. If that's gone, then you have issues. Oftentimes, like we have here, where we took out a lot of predator species, and now we have an overabundance of deer and stuff like that. Chances are they were very good with population control, but unfortunately, there were lots of other factors that were also taking out other mammals that they would have gone after. So,
right. Well, I guess if the Thylacine got outcompeted by, say, the dingo, then what is lost by not having the thylacine that the dingo also provides.
Ultimately, I honestly don't think you're entirely wrong, because if a competitor came up and managed to beat it out of its own game, it seems like that's kind of just what went down. Is another species became more effective at hunting in its environment, and it could no longer survive.
And again, that's the totally crass opinion. I'm not saying that species don't have value. I'm not saying just extinct things for the sake of it, but just
No, I totally get you. It's an interesting thing to think about, because now what Australia seems mostly fine. It seems like every type of critter out there wants to kill you, but it seems like nothing's like suffering for the lack of them.
Like, on the one hand, like, I'm pretty sure if you wiped out all the thylacines, as you can see, like, Australia is doing just fine without the thylacines. We didn't really need thylacines. The only reason why you would want them around would be just for biodiversity. And I'm trying to think of what the name is for this, but it's like the cute animal problem or something. I'm sure I'm very close to this, but it's like the reason why the government of China pours so much money into breeding more pandas. Pandas should not be alive. They are evolutionarily set up to fail. They eat bamboo, which has no nutrition in it. They accidentally kill their own young all the time. They need very specific breeding conditions. Like, if humans didn't intervene, they would have gone extinct anyway.
I'd argue that the panda is now a pet, but a pet of a nation.
Yeah. But because people like pandas because they're so cute, we want to keep them around, even though, same thing, they don't really provide anything to the environment, but something that's detrimental to humans, like mosquitoes, or maybe something we don't even care about, like some random frog species or a random fish species. If we don't see the impact, or I don't know, like some deep sea fish that we will never see, there's no effort to save those because no one cares / knows about them.
Yeah, and even I'm talking about this because I think they're, kind of charismatic looking creatures and have an interesting narrative behind them from kind of our interactions with them. And, if this was a frog, I think I'd be way less interested in the story. But there's, definitely species that had similar things, or they just died out because there was no longer an environment that could support them.
So Tasmania should have tried harder, is what I'm hearing.
You can say what you will, but they were just kind of doomed, sadly.
Yeah, and I think modern Tasmania has realized, I don't know if it was the thylacine in particular that was their wake-up call, but I've been to Tasmania, and as I'm sure you know, there are certain restrictions in coming to Australia of things you can bring. Jonny Depp, for instance, got in trouble for not declaring his dogs. If you are going from mainland Australia to Tasmania, you have to go through the same process again. The whole island is under quarantine. You can't. They don't want to bring invasive species, anything that could wipe out the local ecosystem, just because they know how fragile it is.
And Oceania seems like such an interesting thing with that, because again, they're all different islands, but so many of them have their own different ecosystems with different species that you won't find on other islands.
And then once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, and this was one that was affected by that. So I guess it makes sense that nowadays they'll be like, yeah, no, don't introduce anything that you don't want here.
Well, yeah, that's if you could sum up the history of Australia in a nutshell with animals, you could talk about every time the Europeans brought something, it just made it all worse.
Yeah.
Toads, man. Cane toads.
Oh my gosh, the cane toad incidents.
Well, and the rabbits.
Yep.
Let's just release rabbits into the wild. What's that? Nothing hunts rabbits? I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, and not only that, but they are, being normally used to being hunted, they produce a lot of rabbits.
Yeah. Oh, fun fact, where I was living in Australia is it's called Queensland, and you are not allowed to have rabbits as pets in there. You cannot own a rabbit in the state of Queensland. They've made a big fence in the outback to keep the rabbits out. The exception to this rule is if you are a magician.
Why? Because it's a tool of the trade?
I guess, I don't know.
No.
Or maybe they're like, well, if he's magic, we can't stop him.
they just had too many problems with people hiding them in hats. They're just like, oh, we can't beat this.
I don't think couldn't have been a magician.
That is so funny.
That is pretty funny.
Oh my gosh.
You can also apply an exhibit and deal with the rabbit at the premise where the license is issued. Oh, so you can if you got a license, you're okay.
Oh, okay.
An example may include an invasive pest educational center or a zoo. Rabbits may also be obtained solely for the purposes of exhibition outside the premise where the license is issued to. An example of activities solely off the regular enclosure site include persons in the business of conducting magic.
Oh,
Magic performances at children's parties. Sorry.
I want that on like a business card, like person in the business of conducting magic.
Just cover out the rest of it.
That's so good.
So Thylacine probably wouldn't have made a good pet, right?
No, I don't think so. It looks like some people might have tried with the captivity, but no, I don't. Awfully toothed creatures might not make the best pets. Yeah, don't pet the Thylacine. They'll probably bite you.
Unless you can go back in time and do it, in which case maybe just bring one over.
Oh, yeah. That's it. We'll solve extinction with time machines. Yes.
Done.
Perfect. But they can't bring rabbit.
Yeah, don't bring any rabbits.
Yeah, time machine operators cannot bring rabbits into Queensland.
Unless they're a magical time traveler.
Oh, there you go.
So like Harry Potter, Time Turner.
Yep.
Do it.
Yeah, that's how we'll do it.
How many turns would it take to go back 70, I guess 90 years at this point?
I think you just gotta hit it on like a
How
like
many
a spool
hours in 90 years?
Gosh, they have been gone for 90 years, haven't they?
788,400.
Okay.
Dang.
788,400 turns ought to do it.
Yeah, I think they'll be there a while.
You'd need a second time turner to have enough time to turn the first time turner.
that just sounds like it's gonna break a lot of things. Let's not wrap our heads too hard around that. But yeah, that's Thylacine. And everything we've not everything, but the story of its rise and fall, I guess.
Everything you could learn overnight.
Yeah, basically. Everything I did in there, my little cram study.
Cool.
Yeah. Cute little things. Sad they're gone. Oh well. This was Overnight Experts with JJ.
And Aiden.
And David. Hey, thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on the show, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this so that we can continue to grow our audience. If you like what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.